So, welcome to this edition of Friday Night Live with Ken and Cheryl. She's Cheryl.
He's Ken.
And tonight we're coming to you, we are coming to you live from the Carnival Radiance. So, if there's video quality issues, that would be why. And we have our special guest on tonight. We'll bring Loraine in. Loraine Woodward is let's say she's really good at connecting people with lodging. Is that a good description?
Okay, I think that's great.
So, I've talked before, and I'm in love with what you're doing. So, how did you get started with your project, and tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Sure. I have muscular dystrophy. It's been a way of life for me. I was diagnosed at 2, and I use an electric wheelchair. And my 2 boys also have muscular dystrophy. They're now 25 and 26 years old, which is hard to believe. And we didn't vacation a whole lot growing up with the boys. It was hard on my husband with the 3 of us. We've got 3 scooters in the van going to places. And it was really just hard to find accessible places for us to stay. And so when the boys graduated high school, I thought, okay, I would like to, create a place that they can go to and vacation. So we built a beach house. It's predominantly just for our family. And we built a rental unit at our beach house so that we could bring in some revenue. And we designed it so that somebody with the least amount of mobilities, like myself, could enjoy the space. So we created it with the elevator, a hospital bed, a rolling shower, actually a big European style wet room. And so then the 3rd floor is where we stay. And I turned 59 a year ago. And I said, what do I want to do that brings me joy and happiness? And I love my renters. I love being a part of my renters' experience and coming to Lorraine's Kuna Matata, which means a place of no worries. And that I love being a part of, it's the first time in 28 years that a family's vacationed, or the first time they vacationed since the onset of an illness or injury. And Carol, Ken, and Cheryl, you all know what it's like to experience accessibility issues when traveling. And so I decided that I wanted to do one last hurrah before I turned 60. And that was creating an opportunity to provide education and awareness about accessible properties. And so I said, I wanted to create a TV show. And that's how Becoming rentAble got started, is the whole idea of sharing and educating information about how to create an accessible short-term rental property. And
Very
so,
nice.
Thank you. So we started 13 months ago. We're now a team of 14 volunteers. So it's all done on a volunteer basis. And we came up with a TV show. It's 13 episodes. It is 30 minutes an episode. It tells a story of a family who goes on vacation, what their needs are. We do some construction and reveal. We have created 2 shows in its pilot form. We have not pitched it yet. I keep telling my team, no, we're not ready yet. No, we're not ready. And they're like, well, when are we going to be ready? And, but, we started off with just this TV show. And Ken, you'll have to interrupt me sometimes, because as you'll see, I can go on and on and on and keep talking. And everybody says, Loraine, take a breath, let people ask a question. So when you need me to, cut it, just give me the signal. But we, so the question came up, where am I watching from? Is that for me, or is that for the listeners?
That's for the audience. I put up a couple of these little banners.
Okay,
so you can ignore
North Carolina. Our beach places in Carolina Beach.
We give we give our audience a chance to interact.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
This is good. This is good. Anyway,
with us.
so we ended up doing a survey to find out what are people's needs when they vacation. We wanted to make sure that in advocating for accessible short-term rentals, that it wasn't just my opinion and what my needs are for an accessible property, but we really got to hear from others. And so what's happened over the last 13 months is we keep evolving. And so we're still looking at the TV show, but we've done a lot of other things based on needs. And one of the needs we found, and Ken, I know that you've talked about this before, and that is in the short-term rental industry, we want to have the industry look at what it means to have an accessible property and go beyond the wheelchair, because there's people that use walkers that could benefit from modifications, people with vision, hearing, autism, IDD. And so that is what we've broadened our scope of what accessibility means in a short-term rental.
And that is so nice, because you and I are working in similar directions, kind of on different things. Because I'm working right now with building out a guide, for people to find all kinds of activities that are accessible, and trying to make sure that the way I'm building it is that properties can identify the specific things that they provide, because every family is going to be different. We all travel with challenges. I'd say everybody travels with a challenge of some kind. Sometimes it's just budget. But...
Traveling with Ken is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I didn't say the prop could talk. But as I was starting to try to build out this list of things that people could show as features at their property or their, because it could be like a tour agency, it could be a transportation company, it could be like a boat, or all kinds of different kinds of things that people are looking for, but they need to know if it matches their needs. Part of it was a discussion I had with the director of tourism in Skagway. We were talking about the fact that when you think about accessibility, so for example, a boat might not be mobility accessible, but it might be fine for a blind person, might be capable of helping somebody with a guide dog, might be the adventure might be let's say something that would work for somebody that with on the spectrum somewhere. So you really need to quantify exactly what a property or attraction supports, and everybody's needs different, and you just need to have like a checklist of all these things that can be done, and that's what we're working on the travel side, because there's not a directory like that anywhere in the world.
Right. Well,
I search all of the time.
Right. Well, and I think that's the benefit of what we both are doing. I know in the short-term rental industry, when you go onto certain websites, there's only a filter for accessibility or elevator. On our site, we have 36 different filters. And the purpose of that is, I get a question asked all the time, Loraine, what makes a property accessible? And I say, well, there's 62 million Americans with a disability, and there's probably 62 million different ways that you could answer that question. And it's because what is accessible to me may not be the need that you have. So by providing these different filters, it allows people to identify specifically what their needs are and to find that match. And that's why when you go to our site, becomingrentable.com, you'll see almost 600 properties that we have found in the United States that are accessible. But it's not just about wheelchairs. We have walker accessible, vision, hearing, and autism IDD. And so again, the best that we can do is provide that information, so then your listeners can then determine what meets their needs.
Yeah, and that is exactly the need that exists, for people that, because we started what we do because we couldn't find answers to questions, and our questions, when we started, were just focused on mobility. Now, it's just like you have. We've broadened out our questions and our the things that we're trying to find to cover as many possible disabilities as we can. I did an interview. I don't think it's up on the channel yet, but with a gentleman in England. Yeah,
Mm.
no, in Scotland.
Was it
I had to think
Charles?
about where he was. The one with the program that lets you it's like an app that shows what disability a person has before they enter a store. Neat Box is, and so they can, for the end user, there's an app, and they can go in and create a profile in that app that defines how somebody should interact with them. And
Right.
then the stores that subscribe to it, when they get notified that person's coming, there's training, basically instantaneous training for that person in the store that's going to help them, so they know what they should do, what kind of support that individual might need. And I thought that was just such a great thing. And it's there's so many things as we've gotten involved in trying to find answers for people, and having conversations with people like yourself, and so many others that really are educating us, I guess, is maybe as much as anything else.
Okay, so you have a listing then that has a 600 facilities that
Right.
a
They are
handicapped person can rent, right?
right. All of our properties are short-term rental properties. So you want to go on a beach vacation, a mountain vacation, go visit your cousins, your nieces or nephews, but you have specific needs, you could come to our site and identify and look to see if there's any properties in the area that you live in. We've also added a new component, and that is List My Property. So we are a listing site. We're not a booking site. So the properties that you see on our site will link you to where you can book it. If it is through VRBO, Airbnb, Vacasa, or smaller property management firms that we list and provide that information, then you would go book it. But we also invite people to say, well, wait a minute, we have a short-term rental property and we believe that it's autism friendly. And so they can go on our site, list our property, submit it. We will then evaluate it and confirm, and then let them know when it's published so that people can actually, we have a team of folks who go out, and what they do is they research. And then we have another team that take that research. They go, okay, we found a property at Carolina Beach, and here's the property. Somebody else then looks at that property, enters it into the system, and then we have a third set of eyes that then validates everything that person 1 and 2 have seen to confirm that it is what it says it is. Because that's a huge challenge right now when you go on a site and you key in the filters and you find 785 properties, and you start looking, and the first one's not accessible, and the 5th one's not, and the 10th one's not, and the 30th is not, and you've been working on it for 4 hours, then you go back the next day, and then you just throw your hands up and go, okay, maybe we'll just do a stay-at-home vacation. And or like you all, go on a cruise. And so that's what we want to make sure that happens, is that what we see that is accessible is accessible. And we're doing a certification program where property management companies can ask us to go in, look at the properties, and certify that they are indeed accessible, so that on their end, what populates first are those properties that are accessible.
Oh, that's great, because sometimes you're told something's accessible and you get there and it's just not quite what you were expecting. because I'm ambulatory accessible, I can deal with a lot of things that aren't the way they're described. But that's why we like to get videos so other people can see what it really is like.
Mm-hmm. Right. You need
And
the benefit of that service is that you're validating, what is and is not, so that people's expectations and hopes are very clear from, what you're seeing, as well as and what service we're providing.
right. And the cruise lines like that too, because, and the hotels, because they don't want unsatisfied customers either, especially on vacation. I mean, the last thing you
Right.
want to do is let somebody down when they've been looking forward to vacation for a long time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is interesting because a good example of the pitfalls is we went to visit some properties in Mexico, and we were told that they were accessible, and the bathrooms didn't have rails, like they should for the toilet. One of the rooms that was supposed to be accessible didn't have any rails or any handholds at all. In the shower, it had a little short rail, no shower chair. And it was absolutely not an accessible room, but they listed it as accessible, and they listed the property as accessible. And so you start to run into these things where people stretch the truth a little bit.
Yeah, like the property, like the outside. It's funny because the outside of the property was totally accessible, but once you get into the bathroom, which you really need, that wasn't. It was very unusual to say that it's accessible.
Well, and a lot of times it's not so much that the truth is stretched, but I do agree with you. I think is a lack of understanding of what does it mean to be accessible. Well, we have a rail in the shower, so isn't that all that you need? And so by providing that more in-depth information, not only in photography, but also in the written narrative. I explain a lot of times that it's really important that in the short-term rental industry, that when you're taking a photograph of the shower, not the shower curtain, to open the shower so you can see what's inside of it. And so many photographs are taken from the waist up. Well, if you are using a walker, a cane, a wheelchair, you want to see what's on the floor. So let's show what's on the floor. Is it a step-in shower? Is it a roll-in shower? Exactly where are my feet going to go, and how am I going to transfer or step into that shower? And so a lot of times people say, oh, but we don't have to worry about the narrative because only people look at the photographs. But that's not so true in the area of disability. If we don't see it, we want to know about it, because my wheelchair, it can fit through a 32-inch door, but you're going to know that I came in through the 32-inch door because I'm going to leave tracks on either side of that door, and I need a 36-inch door. So if I can't see that it's a wide door, I could look at the description and go, oh, they've written that it's 36 inches or 34 inches. And then some properties say we're ADA compliant. Well, ADA is 30 years old, and ADA says a 32-inch door is just fine. And that's why having that detailed information on what you have is important, because how wheelchairs were made 30 years ago is very different than how they're made today.
Yeah, I was interested too in learning a little bit more about your this how you said a TV show that you're making, and you've got several episodes. And so you're showing how you made it. Are you showing how to make a rental property accessible, or exactly what are you showing?
Sure. So what we do is our first episode's of a family from Durham, North Carolina. It's of a caretaker and a gentleman, Sloan, who is, I believe, 38 years old. He is visually impaired. He is on the spectrum of autism, and he uses a wheelchair. And so when they travel, that they specifically for Sloan, the most important area is the bedroom. And because of the amount of wedges that they have to use to get him comfortable, because most short-term rental properties don't have an electric or hospital bed. And so in this story, we talk to Sloan and his caretaker and talk about what their needs are. Then, so the focus of this episode is on the bedroom of an accessible property. And we talk about, and we do show the construction of that space, and what is considered when making an accessible bedroom, how much space we need for a turning radius, how wide is the closet, where are the electrical outlets for a Hoyer lift that might be an electrical Hoyer lift or the manual Hoyer lift, where are you going to put that Hoyer lift? Then we talk about, we continue to share their story throughout the show. And then at the end, we have, like a lot of shows, the reveal of here's the construction, and now it's all, the paint's on the wall and the comforters down. And then we show them having a successful vacation. In the show, we do 2 pullouts. One pullout is on the condition or health issues of the person that needs an accessible space. So in this case, it's cerebral palsy. So we do a pullout on what is cerebral palsy. And then we do, at the end of the show, we provide an access link to a website that gives you information about, here is cerebral palsy. If you would like to learn more, here's the URL for United Cerebral Palsy. We talk about the Hoyer lift and the colors on the wall, and we provide that detail. And then in the other pullout, it's education about the architectural elements that's needed for an accessible property. And so each show, so right now we have 3 properties that we're filming their construction for. We have one in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a condo of a young man that has mobility issues, and that will be a short-term rental. We have a property on the banks of the Tennessee River that we're shooting right now. And then we have a property in Arkansas. The property in Arkansas is actually a model property that we are building. And it's a property that will be fully accessible for walker, wheelchair, autism, IDD, vision, and hearing. We wanted to have a property that we could use for the show, for our intro and our outros, the beginning and the end. And we wanted a show where we could teach people about what a property may look like if it's wheelchair accessible or walker accessible. We're also working with the local university and their Department of Occupational Therapy. So I'll go in and do a lecture to the class, and then the next class period, they'll go to the little yellow house and they'll be able to touch it, feel it, see it, learn from it. So as they begin their careers in occupational therapy, they'll have that experience that we hope they can carry on.
That's great. I think you need to find some type of a company that will, like, maybe make a well, you know how they do the other shows related to renovating houses? Maybe you can find one of those organizations that would say, hey, once a year, we're going to renovate a handicap accessible rental property or something, and they could, like, come in and flush some funds in there, and we could get more of these built faster. And,
I know it.
I know. That's an idea,
Right. It is a great idea. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I was talking with a group of investors who owned a mountain resort community, and they asked me to go in and look at their properties, and I did. They asked me to look at their accessible property, which I did. And they asked me, was it accessible? And I said, no, it wasn't. And they were like, okay, I guess our meeting is done. I said, well, why is our meeting done? And they said, well, because all of our properties have a flight of steps. And I said, you know what? People with autism can climb steps. People with visual impairments can climb steps. People with, hearing and hard of hearing issues can climb steps. This may not be a property that you want to invest in a chair lift or an elevator, but that doesn't mean it can't be an accessible property. And so we're trying to encourage people to look at different aspects of how you make your property accessible. And so one of the investors says, okay, I will make our property autism friendly. And so we talked about how do you do that? And lo and behold, it was less than $500, a couple of weekends worth of work. And now they have a property that they can reach now 60 plus million individuals and families that are on the spectrum of autism. And so, we can, by education and awareness and being on a part of what you all are doing, able to increase the amount of properties that are accessible.
Yeah, and I love what you just mentioned, because not every property has to be accessible for every disability.
Right.
Because because there are so many disabilities, you can be specific about what you make it accessible for based on the need.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And and it's looking at things differently. I was in an interview earlier today, and we hope one day on our website to be a full resource of products. If you want to make your property accessible, you come to Becoming Rentable, and we'll identify, here's autism, here's vision, here's mobility. And so they were like, well, we don't have any accessible products that we carry. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Do you have blenders? And they were like, well, yes, we do. And I asked them, I said, well, do you have blenders that have the plastic casing versus the glass, just because of the weight? They were like, yes. And I said, and do you use those blenders to make like margaritas and daiquiris and maybe milkshakes? Well, yes. I said, you know what? A lot of people use blenders to blend food to feed to their family member that is fed through a feeding tube. So that blender is an important part of making your property accessible. And they were like, we never thought of that. And so again, it's thinking about what could be common to one person, but yet is a need for their accessibility needs for another.
Yeah, and that I love that as well. I guess for people that are listening that are interested, and in the description, in the show notes, in the description, I'll add your links. But what is it that they can do to get to learn more about it? And let's start with, for people that are traveling with challenges. What is the best way for them to reach out to you and start to see what you have available?
Sure. I mean, you can go to becomingrentable.com, and it's we were trying to be creative in our name. So we have Becoming, and then Rent, R-E-N-T, and then we go A-B-L-E. So we focus on the able. So some people say Becoming rentAble, and we say Becoming Rentable. So you can go on our website, and we have a lot of educational materials that we've designed. I mean, one piece of material that we have, and it's more for the individual who wants to build a property and make it accessible. And a lot of people, I'm finding out, are hesitant about creating their as accessible because of the fear of breaking the law, and the law meaning ADA. Well, actually, in a short-term rental property that has less than 5 bedrooms, the ADA that was written 30 years ago doesn't apply to that home as an industry. And so if you have, 500 properties and they are beyond 5 bedrooms, then that would be looked at differently. So we're trying to educate the people who want to make their properties accessible, and educate them so that they're not afraid of being sued. It's like, I don't understand the ADA. So we created a document that gives them that kind of information. You can go online and find a document that gives you 10 ideas of how to make your property accessible that costs less than $100. And how do you make your property accessible when it's already constructed. What can we do? And so we have that. An example that I gave to a group this week was, I said, do you have under counter lights? And they were like, yes, we do. And if you don't, you can add them, and they're sometimes battery operated. You don't even have to have it electrically, outfitted. And that's really helpful for somebody with low vision, to have those under counter lights. So there's a lot of that kind of information on our website, as well as our map, that you can go and, see if there's any, properties that are in, Purdue country. It's like, oh, my granddaughter is going to Purdue and I want to be there for her graduation. So they can go online and see. And I don't know that we have one there, but that was just because I think basketball, I'm thinking Purdue. But anyway, there's a lot of information that they can see by going to our website.
Great.
That's a nice thing. That is so, what you're doing is so helpful for families, especially because, you think about first of all, most hotels have limited numbers of rooms. So trying to find something, we kind of encountered a situation, and I'm a little aggravated about. I rented a room out on Catalina Island, and the ADA rooms were really expensive. And I thought, well, okay, we'll just do, because Cheryl can walk a little bit. We'll just get a regular room, and deal with it. They didn't tell us the room was 3 stories up and there's no elevator.
So yeah, that was quite interesting. So now we're going to put some information out there about Catalina Island, that if you want an accessible room, they're all on the first floor. All first floors are more expensive than the rest of the floors. Yeah. And it's just because everybody wants to be on the first floor, I guess. But and then also, like, make sure you reserve a specific room there.
Yeah.
Because you have to really talk to the people. Don't reserve online, because you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. And we learned some lessons the hard way. It's interesting because one of the things that we found, and this is pretty common, is in hotels, in cruise ships, in so many places, in an accessible room, guess where they leave the handheld shower?
I would hope near an area that you can access easily.
No, they usually leave them all the way up.
They're like about 7 foot up. So if you're not really tall like I am, or you don't travel with someone, you'd have to get someone to come pull the shower down. Then when they clean them, they put them back up again. So we need to get the industry to understand, hey, put it down, and then people can move it up.
Yeah.
But if it's too high, you can't bring it down.
Right. Well, it's that kind of education.
Things like that.
Right. Well, on our website, if you go to our service area, we have, we say a lot of times, 0 threshold entry. Well, that is a mouthful of words. What does that mean? So you can go and learn about features of an accessible property, and you can go to our features page, and it will show you a picture of a 0 threshold entry. It also gives you a label of this is what it is, and a definition of how it's used, because there's an idea that if it's not a step, then you can get into a property. Well, for me and my electric wheelchair, we can go over certain thresholds, but sometimes when you get to 1 inch, 1.5, 2, it's like you got to take this running start and go bump. And so that is something that we show. And again, it would be great to have photographs that you could send to the places that you've gone to that have the shower issue, and say, gosh, not all of us are 7 feet, 5'2" on a good day for me. And then because I do stand to get in a shower. I can't sit down because I don't have the ability to stand up on my own. I have equipment and my husband. So I have a toilet seat that lifts me to a standing position. This bed lifts me to a standing position. And so even when I'm lifted and standing up, I couldn't reach that. But people don't think about that. You know, we talk about it all the time that unless you have a disability yourself, a friend or a family member, then this is not your everyday and it's not thought of. So how do we bring that to your attention?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've seen, and we're on our third cruise ship in 2 weeks. And one of the challenges that we've run into, yeah, well, it's just a collection of things. We were on a brand new ship yesterday. Well, this morning we were on a brand new ship. We got off of it, just went to another ship because it was cheaper than a hotel. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But one of the challenges that we see that's on cruise ships a lot is they'll have a ramp, but the door at the top of the ramp, you have to be a gorilla to open it. And
Right.
you know, again, my wife has me. I'm the muscle she needs. But for somebody that is not, doesn't have somebody with them, and doesn't have, especially they don't have good arm strength, you can't, even though it's got a ramp, you can't get into it, because first of all, your wheelchair wants to roll back down the ramp, and there's just not an easy way to navigate with the door in a wheelchair. And you think, okay, so why not, and I'm going to have this conversation because I know the people at most of the cruise lines that deal with accessibility is in reality, if there's a ramp, there should be a power door. If it's flat, maybe not. But if there's a ramp, there ought to be a power door switch so that people with disabilities can navigate in and out.
Oh, my favorite door switch is the one where you just barely push or pull on the door hardly at all, and then it opens by itself. I just love that. I've seen that in a couple buildings. And the great thing about it is they don't have to install a button. It's just all in the hinge mechanism at the top of the door. So that's really easy to put in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the short-term rental.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say in the short-term rental space, doors are very important, and how wide they are. The levers, are also important versus having knobs. So we address that. And going back to your ramp issue, ramps are a great tool in the short-term rental industry to provide access if you have, that one step and you can put the 1 foot ramp there or even 2 steps. I'm not comfortable with the 3 steps and a 12-foot ramp. But what I am finding out in the ramp world is that there are so many different kinds of ramps. I recently found a ramp that they have for a shower that has a step-in shower. It's a ramp that comes, into the shower, and then it goes over the step and then down into the shower. Now, so it's a big bump, but it does allow somebody, if you're in a wheelchair, and that is, the only, accessible property in the town that you're visiting, how by using that kind of ramp would allow you to go in a shower area for a shower.
Yeah. And it's just about getting people trained to think about it, in fact, I emailed one of the cruise lines the other day about the fact that the best thing, and one of the cruise lines did this, is they had able-bodied people have to spend like a week using a wheelchair or a scooter or a walker as they did as they went around the ship, because that way then you start to experience what it's like, because it's very hard, especially for in the design stage, because one of the ships we were on was brand new, but we ran into the ramp issue, we ran into heavy door issues.
And I said they need to have not a really able person using the wheelchair, because not everybody's has the strength of an able-bodied person. you know.
Yeah. So you get, at least
A lighter weight person maybe, or a smaller person using it. Like if you put Ken in a wheelchair, he could still open any door, but I can't open all the doors.
Right.
you know,
Yes. Well, it's what it's so much about is education and awareness, and how do we get this change? And that's what we're trying to do is really, in the short-term rental industry to reevaluate how properties define what it means to be accessible. How do cruise ships identify what it means to be accessible? What are those features that their guests need so that they can enjoy that vacation, that trip on a cruise ship? And if we don't provide that information, we're not going to see change. And so, and then, I talked with a group months ago, and they were like, well, we advocate for people with disabilities. And I said, well, what are you doing to team up with groups that work with people with disabilities? And he said, well, nothing. I don't have a disability, so it's not right for me to go and talk to them. I said, but it is important. If we are building a community that says cruise ship industry, short-term rental industry, we need this. And then if you don't have people that need those services attending, they're going to go, well, why make it accessible? We only have 1% of our travelers that use it. So, it's important that we get information out to the people who would like to benefit and travel, as well as the entity who is going to provide that space for them to enjoy.
Right. Yeah. We need to get out there and use it. That's why we're helping people to get out here and see what's available. We hope they'll come and join us.
Exactly. Now, when you all are traveling, do you see a lot of people with disabilities travel also?
We see a lot of scooters. We see a lot of scooters and some wheelchairs. And I'm not sure that people are aware of how friendly for mobility, especially how friendly the cruise lines are. They do have a number of wheelchairs at the ports, and they'll push you up onto the ship because it's usually a steep ramp. They will get you up into the ship and they help you get off the ship at each port. So there are things. And then I have my own wheelchair. So sometimes Ken pushes me on, and sometimes they insist on pushing me on. And yeah, they're very friendly. People, I don't think that people realize it. And some people are so afraid. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna have knee surgery. I don't think I can cruise for a couple years." I'm like, rent a scooter, take a wheelchair, buy your own wheelchair if you're gonna get tired, or a walker. There's so many things that a folding wheelchair and a folding walker can fit in almost any cruise ship room. It will be tight, but if you book in advance, the handicap rooms are huge. They really are.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what about
I was going to say,
wheelchairs?
Oh, they're great.
What about can they go?
I use a wheel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You can rent them. You can even rent electric wheelchairs. So like if you're too tired to push yourself around, I scoot around, let me use it's called a WILL scooter. And it was fantastic. It was as small as a wheelchair, maybe even a little smaller in the back.
Actually, it was a power chair, not a scooter.
A power chair. And it was wonderful. I could turn it around in the elevators, the small elevators, just turn it right around. We have a video of me. I put a camera on my forehead and just spun around in the elevator and showed how it worked. And so for the accessible rooms, that works. And a regular wheelchair that if you didn't fold down would work. But if you have one that folds, then we have squeezed them into regular rooms, but it is hard. They do not have a place to store your accessible equipment. Everything you take has to fit in your room at night. So that's the big concern. You have to know what the size is of what you're bringing in and how easily it folds.
Yeah, and I will share, because one of the things, even though the ship we were on had some things that could have been better, okay, they did some things that I thought were amazing. They had, by the stage in the main theater, they had like a lift so that if somebody was playing a game show, they do like a deal and no deal show and some other game shows, so that if somebody was a contestant and they were in a mobility, were having mobility challenges, they had a lift by the stage so that would lift them up to the stage, so they could get on the stage like everybody else. Yeah,
that's the first time we've seen that.
You're starting to see more and more stair lifts, so that if they have an area that they don't have an elevator for, they may have like a regular, I'm talking about the chair lift that you sit down and goes up the staircase and turns around. Now if you needed the wheelchair at the top, somebody's gonna have to carry the wheelchair up. So it wouldn't work well with a scooter, but it would work really well with somebody like Cheryl that has a wheelchair. I could just carry the wheelchair up and she could have it at the top. And they have miniature golf up there on the one that we saw yesterday.
And then also on some of the cruise ships where they have, they'll have, like the lift, like a small one-person wheelchair lift with like the plexiglass covering around it to take you like up to play golf on some of the ships, or up to a different, like a Serenity spa area or something. There are things you don't necessarily see if you just take a quick tour. Somebody gives you, if an able-bodied person gives you a quick tour of a ship, you could be missing a lot of the accessible things on the ship, because you have to ask, hey, what about this? What can you do for me? And like they used to have the permanent pool lifts and the permanent spa, the hot tub lifts, but now they have them on wheels. And so they can store them where they don't get weathered as much until they need them. You just have to ask. So right. A lot of it's just knowing. I'm trying to let people know what's out there and explain how to get to it.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. We toured the Battleship Iowa, which is in that port in San Pedro, and they had ramps to get up. Now the ramps to get up were steep. A person in a wheelchair wheeling themselves, I'm not sure that would be a possibility.
You have to go zigzag for sure, because you couldn't take it straight.
I could get Cheryl up. I have pushed Cheryl up things that I had no business pushing Cheryl up in the last couple of weeks. We climbed a hill we climbed a hill in San Pedro, because San Pedro's right on the tip where the runs down toward the ocean, and there was a bell up there, a Korean bell, that we wanted to go see. And the bus let us off down at the bottom. And by the way, San Pedro has great bus service. It's very easily accessible. But I started up this hill, and I started running out of gas, and the guy was walking down. He helped for a part of it, and then I finished it. Down wasn't too bad, but up was insane. But the Battleship had a pretty steep ramp as well. It would be a challenge. But they had a lift, so that you could get up and see a couple of areas. You couldn't see everything that an ambulatory person could see, but you could see a lot of the Battleship. And I thought that was pretty cool that they had installed these lifts, and made it where you could get in and see things.
And they had one of the lifts that went down to the inside gift shop, which I really wanted to see, but I have a terrible claustrophobia. And the guy said it is dark as you're going down there. And I said, you know what, I can't take the dark or the closing in. So I didn't get a picture of we didn't get a picture of us going down there, but you could even go down in the ship. So I thought that was pretty
Ken, I am scared to ask on if it was that steep for you to push Cheryl. How did you navigate going down? Did you go, see ya?
Well, I always threaten to do that. And that's my standing joke with crew members, like on a cruise ship, if they're helping her down a ramp or something. I said, just let her go. She'll stop when she gets to the bottom. When she runs into something, it's okay.
I hold the brake.
She held the brake, and then down was easier for me than the up, because it was I could put it with the between the brake, with her holding the brake and me holding onto the chair, it wasn't too bad. But like I said, the up killed me. And then we walked all over the up and down area in San Pedro, and San Pedro is a nice place to visit. So anybody that's ever cruising out of San Pedro, that's well worth spending some time doing that.
Yeah, there's quite a few accessible things to do.
Right. Well, that's
so
great.
Pam has a scooter that folds.
Very nice. Well, so when you're taking a cruise, do you commonly go down like a night before your cruise?
We almost, well, actually, it's very rare that I fly the day of the cruise because I can't deal with the anxiety of what happens, because the ship's not waiting on you. So we almost always go down the day before. It just worked out that we decided to come out. The flight was a lot cheaper, and so I thought, well, we'll come out and see San Pedro. And then we went out and we saw Catalina Island. We did the ferry out to Catalina, which was super accessible. Catalina is a very cool place. Now there's some hills and stuff you got to deal with, but we had a really nice time on San Pedro as well.
Well, most of Catalina is flat, except for when you want to go up to the
Really?
Yeah, if you want to go up to a Wrigley Memorial to see that. But the rest, it's a beautiful little seaside town, very accessible. I mean, and everyone was pretty friendly. The hotels are just the real thing there that you got to make sure you have the exact room you want.
Yeah, we did though there was we did they call it a casino, but it was never a casino for gambling. Casino actually just means a place where people gather. They built this huge casino there for dancing. And the ballroom's on the second floor, and it would hold at its max, it would hold 900 couples dancing. But to get people up and down, they built ramps like they have at Wrigley Stadium, and that was I was glad somebody volunteered to help me push Cheryl up.
8 flights up of ramps, but it's an amazing building. I love it because if in case of a fire or anything, you just have to go down the ramp. There's no steps. They said when he built it, they put ramps on both sides of the front because he said if something ever happened to this building, I want everybody to be able to get out quickly. And it's true. I mean, there's huge ramps and you just come down in a minute. It was an amazing building, and it's a beautiful piece of history. It's a really nice tour, and it's accessible. Wow. But you have to have somebody who can push. Well, someone helped Ken. I think Ken pushed me up like 3 ramps, and then a guy helped push me up like 1 or 2, and then we rested because even the tour guide had to rest about walking up 5 flights, and then Ken pushed me up the rest of the way. But you can they have little ramps in the ballroom area. They have ramps going because it was built with some different platforms, and they have ramps going to nearly all of it, and you can go around the outside with a wheelchair. It was all very nice.
Yeah,
and it was built in the 1920s, and it's all accessible.
Well, I mean, I think both what you all are doing and what we're doing at Becoming Rentable, is making a difference and continuing to share the information and having people consider and look at, all of these. Not only is important, but also I think it's to recognize it's good business, when you are looking at accessibility, that you're really broadening the scope of who can enjoy it and increasing the revenue for your business. And to keep that in mind is, with the travel and tourism industry, this is just good business. And as we know, we're aging longer, and it's estimated that by 2035 that we'll have 31.5 more million people that have disabilities. And that's strictly because of, we're living longer.
Yeah. Well, and part of it too is it's going to really boom for a while because the baby boomers were the largest generation ever. And, I'm a boomer, and I just turned 69. So, we're getting older, and, I'm fortunate I've been healthy, but, a lot of folks, start to have the artificial knees, the artificial hips, and all of a sudden, now we're talking about needing to put some extra thought into how they're traveling and where they're traveling. And so having some resources available is so critical.
Exactly. Well, and I always like to throw out numbers and stuff, but when we're looking at our reach in our travel and tourism industry, and and you all are a great example of that. You have somebody with a disability and a family member. And so now it's not just 62 million Americans with disabilities, it's 62 million Americans plus, their friend that's going to travel, a family member that's going to travel. And so you really even broaden the benefit that much greater. It's all, and what we sometimes don't think about is the short-term disabilities. that, you may not have the energy that you had before because of COVID, or like Ken said, the hip surgery, the knee surgery. And so you need it for a period of time.
I say,
Right.
even healthy people can break a leg and cast. Many times, you see skiers in their 20s with a cast on a cruise, and they want to be able to get around. And what I remember most about disability and making adjustments in buildings and services is that I've always read that when you make something more accessible for those who have challenges, everyone else enjoys it more. And it's so much true. I mean, like when you go shopping and the door just opens when you walk up to it, boy, everybody loves that. Then they got it where you just pick your foot out and your back door comes up on your car. Well, all that's because it was making things easier, and everybody loves it,
I always told my father-in-law he didn't like curb cuts. And I said, well, moms with strollers sure love them. The UPS drivers love them. People in walkers love them. They said they are a very important part of our communities, are these curb cuts. He ended up being my best advocate ever. And but it's interesting that, I always tell everybody when we built our first house, we did wide doors. And I said, they said, well, does your husband have a disability? And I said, no, but he likes those wide doors as much as I do. He'll have a briefcase in one hand, maybe a load of groceries in the other. He can do a little elbow action and a swing of the hip and the door opens, and he didn't have to put down anything. And so, again, we just have to look at that universal design benefit and what we're advocating for. And I think you all are frozen.
Okay, so sorry about that. We lost our internet for a while. We're going to go ahead and kill the broadcast, but thanks everybody for watching. We'll see everybody next time.
Bye. Thanks for watching.